there's an opening next to these research facilities. And this is why I believe they made this treaty, this sharing of information treaty or whatever. There's a 30-meter wide opening there. You can see it on Google Earth. And when you look at it, like, what's in there? And why are they so close to this gigantic opening? What's in there? The answer is whatever Admiral Byrd came across or whatever they're coming across, I think it's linked. I think there's a remnant of ancient civilization in there that possibly is still there, and they're in communication with them. Another thing that backs this up, I took a remote viewing course with Major Ed Dames, Project Stargate, former CIA, United States. And his project was for remote viewing. So I took a course with him several years. He was my actual teacher, my direct teacher. It wasn't like I was under some other people that worked with him. No, he was my direct teacher. There's pictures of me with this man. And he told me that there's beings that have easy and free access to come and go as they please from Antarctica. And he says they come and go as they please because nobody can stop them.
This information will blow your mind. In August 1946, the respected U.S. naval officer and explorer, Admiral Richard Byrd, who was one of the first pilots to fly over the North and South Poles, organized Operation High Jump. It was the biggest expedition ever to Antarctica, with 13 ships, 23 aircraft, and over 4,700 military personnel.
There is a situation that began to happen during World War II where they discovered that the Nazis had went down to Antarctica and built a base down there, New Schwabenland. And they were like, wait a minute, why in the world would they go to this desolate place? What's down there that they would want to go through the harsh weather and risk everything, risk even their lives to be down there and build a base? So he decided to fly down there. Now, there's an incredible story that was in Admiral Byrd's diary.
After World War II ended, Admiral Byrd was asked to lead a large fleet to Antarctica for 4 months, from December to March. They had a list of military goals to achieve. However, something unexpected happened by the end of February. One of the mission's main goals was to look for places in Antarctica that could be used for military bases. But during his exploration, Admiral Byrd found something totally unexpected. This story is believed to be from his diaries, not the ones he published, but personal ones that were later found by his son after Byrd's death and were kept hidden by authorities because they were considered too shocking. In his diary, Admiral Byrd wrote about finding an entrance to the center of the Earth at the South Pole. He flew planes under the South Pole, and as he did, he saw things that shouldn't be there. It was warm, and the area was lush and green, unlike the icy surface above. But that's just the start of his incredible story. He wrote about seeing a shining, rainbow-colored city made of crystal. Suddenly, his plane was taken over by flying disc-shaped objects that guided him to the ground. He was then taken to a large cavern where he met a being he called the Master. The Master was upset about humans using nuclear weapons, like what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and was worried about what was happening on the Earth's surface.
And then all of a sudden, these Nazi, they are rumored to have these craft, which some of the designs have been found, called Hanabu. And these Hanabu craft had the capability of utilizing a couple different forms of propulsion. One was jets, so they can take off vertically. They had little jets that would thrust and take off vertically, but then from there they can shoot off horizontally. Well, they were using a device that was spinning in the center of the craft. And what it appears to be is they began to copy technology from the ancient Indian Vedas, because Hitler was sending his people all around the world to get knowledge on ancient technology. That's how they found these people in Antarctica. He found out about Vimanas, and these people supposedly in Antarctica helped him develop a couple of them, where they use a ferrofluid vortex engine. A ferrofluid is a liquid metal like mercury. And in the ancient Indian Vedas, if you take mercury and rotate it at a high rotation, a high RPM, and electrify it, you get something called anti-gravity. So he was utilizing something that had rotating discs underneath these round craft, according to eyewitness accounts, and also the schematics that were discovered during the collapse of Nazi Germany. And it's pretty interesting that I think besides the uranium that's down there in Antarctica, which obviously you know what uranium's used for, nuclear power plants and also nuclear weapons, Admiral Byrd said there were mountains of coal with no ice caps that can satisfy the world's need for coal for a very, very, very long time. Also, there's plutonium down there. Again, so uranium and plutonium, we know that if you have a high level of plutonium and uranium, It's one of the easier elements that you can separate the atoms. You can split atoms very easily, which makes it high use for weaponry and also power plants. So that's why the government wanted access down there. That's why the Germans wanted access down there. And that's why after Germany fell, we had Project Paperclip, where we took all the scientists from Germany that had learned all this wisdom and knowledge, and we brought them to America. People think Project Paperclip was just a small number of Nazis. We took over 2,000 Nazis with us and brought them to America and put them in positions of power over technology companies, the CIA, the space program at NASA, and so forth and so on. And we began to develop these technologies. So in a weird kind of way, America became the Fourth Reich. If you look at Google's Sky right now on the computer and look down on Antarctica, you'll find research bases from every major country in the world there. And you'll also find the Rockefeller Foundation base as well. So Admiral Byrd was right. All the technology and research is the #1 place in the world for technology research is right down there in Antarctica. I believe that as the ice is melting, they're finding remnants of an ancient civilization. We know that Antarctica was not a frozen tundra.
For UFO researchers, this part of Admiral Byrd's diary is very important because it happened right after World War II and the first atomic bombs were used, which is when the modern era of UFO sightings began. There are also many UFO sightings near nuclear missile sites. Admiral Byrd's story matches other stories of beings from beyond Earth who are worried about how humans use nuclear weapons. If Admiral Byrd's secret diary is real, it could mean that there are advanced beings living inside the Earth who are watching what happens on the surface. According to the diary, after this amazing meeting, Admiral Byrd wanted to tell everyone what he saw, but he was ordered to keep quiet. When he came back, he was taken to a government compound and told he must never talk about what he saw and that everything he knew was now a secret. Could Admiral Byrd's story point to a profound connection between the ancient traditions of strange beings living inside the Earth and the modern-day UFO phenomenon?
A friend of ours, who will remain nameless, went there. Got to go on a cool experience, trip, etc. And he said a couple interesting things. He said the mountains looked eerily pointy and four-sided. Now, he also said this. He said a couple things. He said there is a pact with every country that has a slice of it that they will not dig or remove any minerals from Antarctica. And he even said that a scientist was there, said to them, World War III will not start until one of these countries breaks that pact. They are clearly protecting or preserving something that may or may not be under, I believe it's 3 miles, Mark was saying earlier, at its thickest of ice.
In July 2018, investigative journalist Linda Moulton Howe interviewed a whistleblower who gave her secret information about Antarctica, but only if she kept his identity hidden. Her source, a retired Navy SEAL known as Spartan 1, told her about an ancient structure he visited while he was stationed at the South Pole. At that time, he was a first lieutenant commander in Naval Special Operations. Their mission, which officially was described as a search for a specific individual to gather information, took them to the southeast coast of Antarctica in August 2003, though it was really more of a research survey mission. Spartan 1 described arriving at a large octagonal structure that stuck out about 18 feet above the ice, with most of it hidden underneath. Despite their massive size and thickness, ranging from 18 to 30 feet, the doors could be pushed open effortlessly with just one finger. Outside, the temperature was at least 40 degrees below zero, but inside it was warm, between 68 and 72 degrees. The structure was lit from within, glowing with a lime green light, but no one could find where the light was coming from. The walls inside were covered with what Spartan 1 called hieroglyphics, but they were unlike any he had ever seen before. This leads to the question, could there really be mysterious ancient structures buried under the ice at the South Pole, built by an advanced civilization long ago? Could these structures be something like stone temples, possibly holding biological material, or even remains of beings who lived there, which could be the biggest discovery in human history? Mainstream geologists have long maintained that ancient humans never settled in Antarctica due to its incredibly harsh climate. However, remarkably, a map from 1530 depicts Antarctica, which is notably strange because this was hundreds of years before it was officially discovered in 1820. Here's what Graham Hancock has to say about Antarctica, appearing on ancient maps long before it was discovered.
One of the things I find most striking is the presence of Antarctica on ancient maps, because we didn't discover it until 1820. And yet it's on maps drawn in the 1500s with great detail, which again were based on much older source maps that have now been lost to us. The astonishing thing is the so-called Pinkerton world map, drawn I think in 1813 or 1818, based on the latest exploration data at that time. And where Antarctica is, it just shows a hole where Antarctica is. Because it was an honest map. Nobody had found it by then. But if you go back to, for example, the Wolsey-Muller world map drawn in 1530 or thereabouts, you find Antarctica is present. If you can find Wolsey-Muller world map, it would be worth taking a look at. Orontius Phineus. Go for Orontius. Oronteus. Phineus. Finnaeus. That map shows Antarctica exactly where it should be. There's Antarctica at the tip of South America, just south of South Africa.
And what did they call it back then?
Well, they call it the Southern Land, and it's larger than it is today, but it was larger than it is today during the Ice Age. Antarctica was a much bigger. Now, what the f is it doing on a map drawn in the 1500s, which we know was based on older source maps when nobody knew it existed in the 1500s? To me, the obvious answer is we are dealing with the fingerprints of a lost civilization that mapped the world and that left evidence of that mapping, which ancient map makers found and used and incorporated into their maps.
In a stunning revelation in 2016, satellite imagery unveiled a curious formation emerging from the Antarctic ice, which some researchers propose could be a man-made pyramid. Recently, numerous reports have surfaced of large pyramids in Antarctica. These structures stick out sharply from the ice and snow, appearing perfectly shaped, similar to the iconic pyramids found in Egypt, yet they are significantly larger than even the Great Pyramid of Egypt. Notably, one such pyramid has a perfectly square base measuring 2 kilometers on each side. This intriguing evidence leads to the possibility that perhaps our ancestors managed to reach and possibly even settled on the Antarctic continent. The idea of a man-made pyramid buried beneath the Antarctic ice, if true, naturally raises a series of significant questions. How was such a monumental structure constructed in Antarctica? Who built it, and when did this construction take place?
When I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods in 1995, which is my first book tracing the possibility of a lost civilization, I was very interested in Antarctica, and I was interested in it because of the work of a previous researcher called Charles Hapgood. Charles Hapgood wrote a number of very important books. One of them is called Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, which precisely goes into this issue of ancient maps that don't fit our understanding of what the world was, how the world was supposed to be known at that time. And another is called The Path of the Pole. And he proposed a phenomenon that he called Earth crust displacement, whereby from time to time, the entire outer crust of the Earth, like the skin of an orange, might shift, leaving the core of the Earth in place, so that it could shift like. So if you imagine a very loose orange skin, the fruit is inside, it's staying in place, but you're shifting the skin around it. Well, obviously then, if that happens, Antarctica could have been in warmer latitudes and could have been shifted into colder latitudes.
And how often does this happen?
Well, does it happen at all is the first question. I mean, of all the theories I've looked at and supported, this is the one that I've come in for the most criticism for. And I've been much more interested recently in the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis and the notion that that a cataclysm occurred around 12,800 years ago, caused by impacts of comet fragments, and we can go into that. But when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, although I was interested in comets, I was more interested in Earth crust displacement. And the standard academic response to that is, look, Antarctica's been frozen for millions of years. I think that even those who are still researching this field would prefer it to be the mantle rather than the crust of the Earth that moves. Again, it's very technical, that moves in one piece.
But the idea is...
There's an Italian admiral called Flavio Barbiero who wrote an article for my website suggesting that Earth crust displacement could be kicked off by a comet impact which hits the Earth a glancing blow and causes a shift of this kind taking place.
According to geologists, Antarctica has been under ice for many millions of years. Nevertheless, there is evidence suggesting that certain parts of it may have been ice-free until around 4000 BC. There are numerous tales from Polynesian mythology of so-called culture heroes who reached the Antarctic continent. A French academic named Robert Argaud compiled these various tales into a book entitled Out of Antarctica. These stories describe a mysterious land marked by white rocks sticking out from the water, identified as icebergs, and populated by creatures such as seals and penguins, closely matching the description of what we recognize today as Antarctica. The Polynesian people regarded this place as the home of their ancestors and believed it was their original homeland. This belief raises the question, why did they hold this belief if it were not based on some elements of truth? Is it conceivable that the coldest place on Earth was once warm enough to support human life? In a remarkable 2017 expedition, a German geologist named Johann Klages from the Alfred Wegener Institute gathered core samples from deep within the frozen Antarctic seafloor to investigate the continent's past climate conditions. The results were extraordinary. Employing a unique seafloor drill rig for the first time in Antarctica, the expedition immediately discovered a variety of more than 60 different plant types, resembling those found in a rainforest and existing in a climate similar to modern-day northern Italy. The discovery of such a temperate climate existing on the Antarctic continent was exhilarating because the current climatic conditions do not permit any vegetation to survive. These findings suggest that Antarctica still holds many secrets, which, when uncovered, could profoundly change our understanding of the Earth's environmental history and climate.